Chapter 11. The crowd swallowed us, and after the first few minutes the need to hunch and shuffle fell away. 50 people in chains was nothing here. The avenues carved down into the earth were choked with bodies. Men, women, some free, most not, flowing like a river. It hit me then, heavy as the air. We'd been wrong. Out in the wastes, we thought we were all that was left. We thought the end had already come. But here the end had only made more people. Thousands clung to life in the ashes shadow. Thousands crushed together, gnawing on mold bread, hauling chains, clawing out a life under the burn. Here it was plain there were still pockets of humanity left. Pits had kept us blind. Society hadn't died, it had dug itself down and held on like roots in rock. Remember this, dear reader, no matter how many nukes you drop, life claws for the cracks. It always tries to find a way. My eyes kept dragging downward. The city wasn't built up, it was built down. The streets around us were just the crown. A jagged rim of towers and half-collapsed ruins fenced the opening, but the real weight of it dropped underfoot. Great shafts split the earth, lined with scaffold and light, levels cut into rings that circled downward, as far as sight could go. Balconies of slag metal and scavenged stone jutted out like ribs of a hollow beast. Cables thick as trees ran down the center, glowing faint blue, carrying lifts big enough for whole caravans. Below, the hive's heart pulsed with torchlight and machine smoke. The deeper your eyes went, the cleaner the glow became. Top levels were chaos, shanties of rusted sheet, tarps flapping, the stink of too many bodies. Mid-levels grew steadier, carved stone apartments, cages stacked orderly, streets swept clear. And the very bottom? Gilded glow. White lamps, steady and strong. Shapes of glass and polished alloy. Wealth buried deep as a root. The richer you are, the deeper you dig, Dravage had rasped last night. He hadn't lied. The deeper your eyes went, the cleaner the glow became. Top levels were chaos, shanties of rusted sheet, tarps flapping, the stink of too many bodies. Mid-levels grew steadier, carved stone apartments, cages stacked orderly, streets swept clear. And the very bottom? Gilded glow. White lamps, steady and strong. Shapes of glass and polished alloy. Wealth buried deep as a root. The richer you are, the deeper you dig, Dravage had rasped last night. He hadn't lied. We were marched to the pens without ceremony, herded with others until the crowd thinned. The masters peeled us off in groups, just as we drilled it. My turn came soon enough. A shove in the back sent me stumbling into an elevator cage with Duragan and Verbrandt beside me. The gate clanged shut. Chains rattled. The platform lurched. It began to descend. The shaft was a throat of steel and brick, lined with pipes that dripped rusty oil onto our heads. We passed. One floor where slaves pushed inside giant wheels, massive things like cages for animals, their backs bent, legs pumping to keep the lights alive. The sound was a steady thunder, wood and steel grinding with their breath. Duragan muttered, low, close to my ear. Never thought I'd see something like that. Verbrandt grunted. Looks like they've got half the city turning the other half's lights on. A man in the cage across from us laughed once, humorless. His chains clinked when he shook his head. Don't look too close. You'll be in one soon enough. Where you from? Verbrandt asked him. Northridge. Caravan raid. Same as you, I guess. The man shrugged, as if it didn't matter anymore. They break you down slow here. Feed you just enough, keep you walking till you stop thinking. The platform shuddered as it dropped another level. We could see down past the grating, balconies lined with braziers, merchants haggling, guards in polished coats. Duragan leaned on the rail, eyes narrowed. Looks different, the deeper you go, he said with sarcastic disdain. Objective, ongoing. The next stop and he'd hit like a furnace. A roar of iron. A stink of sweat. Here, men and women worked furnaces heating water and forges alike. Slaves their bare feet pounding against hot stone bodies bent, muscles trembling from exhaustion and heat as they fed the fire. I had to shield my eyes from the glow. Rows of forges lit this place, brighter than the wastes had ever been. But the light was cruel. It made the sweat shine on backs raw with lashes. It made the ribs of the workers stand out like scaffolds. Gods, they are making bullets. Verbrandt muttered under his breath, voice low enough to be lost in the roar, pointing out the lead molds running hot with liquid metal. Duragan only stared. His jaw was tight, his eyes empty. A slave stumbled near one of the forges. The others trampled him as the machine churned on, his scream rising once, then silenced. Another guard walked over with a hook, dragged the broken body out, and shoved in another worker without pausing. The foundry never stopped. The gate slammed shut. We dropped again. We rattled further down. The third stop brought a new stink, rot, mold, damp earth. Rows of fungus farms stretched into the dark, lit by pale lamps. Slaves knelt in the muck, tending thick mats of mushrooms and long threads of engineered algae. The air was heavy, wet. It clung to the skin. Duragan leaned close, muttering in my ear. "Better than eating crow meat." Verbrandt grunted. "Barely." A woman by the farm wall looked up. Her eyes were white, blind from the glow. She didn't flinch when the guards barked. She only turned her face toward the sound of the elevator. The gate closed. The descent continued. We passed level after level. Scavenger markets where slaves picked through heaps of junk. Barracks where bodies slept in shifts on the same mats. Pits where voices rose in chants, half religion, half madness. Each stop painted the same truth: the deeper we went, the more the weight of humanity pressed in. The hive was alive. It was growing. And still we went down. The elevator slowed again. The air grew colder. The lamps grew brighter. The walls here were not rusted metal but polished steel, bolted tight, pipes humming with power. We had reached the middle levels now. The slaves were fewer here. The guards more numerous. The faces in the crowd were cleaner, their clothes newer. Women laughed. Merchants shouted prices for fungus bread, for filtered water, for strips of meat. And further down, far below, the glow turned golden. The elevator jolted again, slowing. The guard barked. "This lot, pens 5 through 8. Out." We were shoved forward. The gate rattled open. The corridor stretched ahead, clean stone and steel, torches hissing blue fire. Doors lined the walls, heavy and barred. From within came the sounds of breathing, coughing, chains. The pens. We were herded along, shoved into one of the doors. Inside, the air was hot and close. Bodies packed shoulder to shoulder, straw mats slick with sweat. Chains bolted into the walls. The stink of piss and mold. The door slammed behind us. The iron bolt slid. We were sealed in. Inside, the slaves shifted, making space. Eyes looked up, tired, suspicious. Some whispered. Some coughed. One woman with a scarred face asked, "New lot? Where from?" The woman's voice rasped like stone dragged over stone. "New lot? Where from?" "North Ridge," I answered, keeping my voice level. The words felt too clean in my mouth. She snorted. "That's far. Thought the caravans there dried up." "They missed us," Duragan said, dry as ash. He leaned back against the wall, letting his chains clank. He looked like any other half-dead man, but I caught the flicker in his eyes. Watching. Measuring. The woman studied us for a long beat, then spat into the straw. "Doesn't matter. You'll be meat in a week." Another voice rose from the corner, bitter and young. "They don't even wait sometimes. Had a man in here last week. Didn't last a day. Screamed till his throat gave out, then they cut him for sport." Silence followed. Heavy, waiting. The only sounds were coughs, chains shifting, the drip of water through the ceiling. I bent my head, lowering my voice until only those closest could hear. "Doesn't have to be that way." The scarred woman turned her face toward me, suspicion tightening her jaw. "What are you saying?" "That I've seen masters and crows broken." Her eyes narrowed. The others leaned in despite themselves. Even Duragan, who knew better, played along, looking away as if he wasn't listening. "You talk too loud, you'll be crow meat," the young one hissed. "If the guards hear you, you'll hang by your own ribs." "I don't need to talk loud." I lifted my head. My voice carried anyway, a resonance in my chest, the old bone stirring. It wasn't a shout, wasn't a chant, but every ear turned. I only need to say it once. "We know what awaits, only death." A hush swept the pen. I let the silence sit, heavy, before I spoke again. "I was chained. Same as you. I was made to kill until I forgot my own face. Tell you this, chains break. Flesh endures. And those crows bleed like any other." Someone in the dark whispered, "He's mad." But someone else whispered back, "Or he's right." The woman studied me again. "Prove it. Words are cheap here. Prove it, or shut your mouth." I nodded. "Give me until the guards leave." The straw stank of mold and piss. The bodies pressed in close. Every cough echoed against the stone. Nobody slept easy their first night in the pens, and I didn't plan to. Duragan had already stretched out, chains loose enough to let him rest. He had that gift, closing his eyes anywhere. Verbrandt sat with his back against the wall, silent, jaw tight. The scarred woman and the boy were curled together across the room, still watching me from under their lashes. I sat in the dark and waited. When the guards made their last sweep, boots clanging down the hall, keys rattling at the locks, I dropped my head like the others. The slot in the door scraped open. A lantern beam slid across the room, yellow light washing over us. The guards' eyes lingered, suspicious, then moved on. The slot clanged shut. Their steps faded. That was the moment. I leaned forward, letting my voice scrape low in my throat, bone stirring like an old wound. At first it was just a whisper, ragged and hoarse. Then I pushed, and it grew. A voice filled the pen. Not mine. Ramless, it said. A man's voice, deep and broken. Narvarouse. Another joined it, younger, pleading. The scarred woman's head snapped up. The men's froze, wide-eyed. I let the voices overlap, rise and fall. The names of the dead rolled through the dark, as if the straw itself were speaking. Vetch, Sir, Caldry, Jera, El Hadron, Noma, Brecht. Some came as groans. Some as shouts. All too human. Duragan cracked one eye, then closed it again. Someone whispered near the far wall, "Moon Saint preserve us." I cut it off as sudden as it began. Silence hit like a fist. The sound of breathing filled the space again, sharp and fast. The scarred woman's voice was barely a whisper. "What in the hell was that?" "The dead," I said. "Nah," the boy breathed. "That was," he broke off, shuddering. "You wanted proof," I said softly. "There it is. The dead don't forget me. They speak when I ask." They didn't answer right away. Fear had its claws in them. I could feel it. That was good. Fear spreads faster than hope. But I didn't want just fear. I leaned back, resting my head against the wall. "You all think there's no way out. You're wrong. I've seen chains break. I've seen pits burn. You spread the word, you whisper it where the guards can't hear. There's a chance. Not tomorrow, not tonight. But soon." The boy muttered, "And if it's a lie? I don't want to become just another voice." "Then we'll die same as you," I said. "But I don't plan to." Silence again. This time, it wasn't empty. It was heavy. Thinking silence. Boots in the hall again, sudden. The slot in the door scraped open. A guard barked something in their clipped tongue and dragged the door wide. The torchlight spilled in, blinding. "Out. You, Scarface." The scarred woman froze. A man grabbed at her sleeve, but she shook him off and rose. Chains rattled. The guard yanked her forward, then dragged her into the hall. The door slammed shut. We all sat, tense. The muffled sounds came through the stone. First her voice, low, stubborn. Then the crack of a whip. A second time, sharper. She gasped, but she didn't cry out. Then came the third, and the sound turned into a ragged scream. The man flinched, covering his ears. "Stop," he whimpered. I stood. The others hissed at me, tried to pull me down, but I shook them off. The bonko was still warm in my throat. I stepped to the door, pressed my forehead against the iron, and spoke. Her scream cut off like a blade. For a heartbeat the silence rang. Then the guard barked something again, angry now. A whip cracked. But it wasn't her voice anymore, it was ours, the dead and I, that answered, echoing down the hall in the tone of the dead. "No." The guard cursed. Surprised by the change in voices. I heard the scrape of boots, the jingle of keys. Then the woman's voice came back, sharp with pain but steady. She was shoved inside, stumbling, clutching her ribs. The door clanged shut. Nobody said a word for a long time. Then the man breathed. He did it, he made them stop. The scarred woman looked at me through sweat and blood, eyes hard. She didn't thank me. She didn't have to. Later, when the pen had settled back into uneasy quiet, she leaned close enough that only I could hear. "You'll get yourself killed doing that." "Maybe," I said. She studied me for a long time. That was the first night. Whispers spread. They always did. Morning came like a curse. The door scraped open before the lamps in the hall were even lit. Boots stormed in. A guard's stick jabbed my ribs, and another yanked Duragan up by the chain. Venbrath got a kick to the side of the head that made him snarl. "No," he spat, blood on his lip. "Not again." The guard cuffed him hard enough to rattle his teeth and shoved us toward the door. The others watched us go without words. Just the sound of chains and breathing. The scarred woman caught my eye as we passed. She didn't look away. They marched us up, not down. Out of the stink of the slave pits, into corridors that hummed with cleaner power. Steel walls, smooth stone floors. The air smelled of polish and sweet oils, glowing compared to the rot below. When they pushed us through the final gate, light hit like a hammer. It was a chamber, vast, rectangular, built of alloy and glass. The ceiling was high, strung with bright lamps. At the center yawned a pit dug into the stone, ringed by bars with high seats protected behind them. Not just seats, lounges, couches draped in silk, tables heavy with fruit and liquor. And them. The shareholders. The ones Dravage had whispered about. Men and women wrapped in finery scavenged from the old world, coats stitched with sequins, gowns of faded velvet, boots polished to mirror shine. They were fat. Glutted. Perfumed. And they were bored. One woman licked syrup from her fingers as she leaned forward. A man next to her swirled liquor in a cut glass cup, not watching us but watching the people around him. Duragan leaned closer, his voice low. "We're the morning show." Van Brandt laughed, chains clinking. "Better hope we're the finale." The guards shoved us to the edge of the pit and cut the chains loose, one by one. My wrists were raw when the iron dropped. A voice boomed from above, an overseer in a gold thread coat. "3 new rats, fresh from the pens. Let's see if they can dance." Laughter broke from the couches. Women tittered behind jeweled masks. A man clapped slowly, mock applause. The walls around the exterior clanged open. Inside waited weapons. Rusted pipes, broken knives, a spear missing its tip. And then from the other side something else, a man, half machine, half flesh, crouched on 3 legs. Its ribs rattled when it breathed. Its jaw was iron. The crowd leaned forward as one. Duragan muttered, "Gods." I bent, picked up a pipe slick with rust, and straightened. "There's no gods. Just us and another thing to kill." Van Brandt grinned a bloody grin and rolled his shoulder like he was pitching a stone. Duragan didn't smile at all. He had that far-off look he got in the pits when the day turned bad, counting angles, listening for a way out that wasn't there. The floor under our bare feet shivered. A mechanical shudder, teeth meshing somewhere below. Steel teeth withdrew. Walls slid. The floor fell away in squares that clicked into new positions, the sound like bones tossed in a bowl. Grates rose, platforms locked, paneled corridors unfolded from the pit's edge and ran inward in a crooked maze. Rising overhead, inside their cages, light blinked alive, cold lamps that cast everything in a surgical glare. The shareholders leaned forward, a murmur rippling through their velvet and sequins and little jeweled masks. The smell of fruit and perfume rode the updraft, wrong as laughter in a morgue. "Welcome, shareholders," the gold thread man sang, voice amplified by some cracked speaker in the ceiling. "Live scenario. Tripod handler engaged. 3 assets. Wager windows open." From the far gate, the man-thing came on its 3 legs. They were not legs made from a man's mind. They were struts and hinged bones and pistons jacketed in old flesh gone gray as wax. Its jaw was iron, teeth stamped out of scrap, lips drawn back like a scar taught to smile. Cables braided down its spine into a backpack of plates. One arm was still human enough to hold a barbed hook. The other ended in a blade that had once been a shovel and now wasn't. The eye it still had was milked over, the one they'd given it burned red. "Great," Van Brandt muttered. Duragan kept his eyes on the panel lines. "It knows the maze." I could feel it too. The thing moved like a man who had walked a room 100 times and knew every loose board. Micro pauses at invisible seams. Little sways that kept it just off-center from the plates most likely to give. It turned its head as if listening and the red eye pulsed with a low whine. The room wasn't just walls and floors. It was alive. And the tripod thing could hear it think. "I think it's running a program," I said to the other's confusion. Bar slid into place. Activating some unknown mechanism. I felt the music in my chest, the chorus there, the old cold whisper of it like wires under skin. "Live scenario, maze objective, survive, escape. Bonus, kill the handler. Resources, HP 6292, Stamina 5480, Chorus, Nels 3/10 the first quarter yawned ahead. A grid of plates ran its length, each the size of a door. Some were dull steel. Some scabbed with the rust of old blood. There were no marks, no signs. The kind of thing meant to teach a rat its place. Duragan nudged the next with his bare heel. "Bad idea," said Van Brandt. "I know," Duragan said. "But if we stand here they'll throw rocks or whatever they do to prod us along." A hum rose through the panels, a charge building. "You just had to jinx it," I joked dryly. The barbed hook of the tripod scraped a line in the plate it stood on. It picked a path and stepped, step, step, too sure. "Sell," Duragan said, low. "Ear." I breathed. Leaning and straining my ears. Somewhere in the coil that threaded my nerves a latch fell and the world picked up an extra sound. Clicks, faint as moth wings. Faster over some plates, slower over others. The hum thickened in my teeth while I deliberated on the sounds. I crouched and put my fingers on the seam between two. The cold of it answered back like water. "That one," I said, pointing. "Then that one. Hear it?" Venbrandt frowned. "I don't hear anything. Follow my feet." We went light as we could. First square. Nothing. Second. The hum went thin. I slid my heel, testing each seam. We moved 3 plates in before it started. A panel to our right sprang like a trapdoor, smashing into Venbrandt. Behind him the wall slid away, revealing a pit where knives whirled like a laughing mouth. The shareholders clapped as you clap when a nice drink is delivered on time. He nearly fell to his death, but Dragon's reactions were fast enough to help him scrabble on the edge. We kept moving. The tripod didn't hurry. It tilted its head and let us walk ourselves out to where the pattern changed, where the panel that wanted us had to have us. It had the hunter's patience. I hated it. We came to a seam the hum couldn't parse. The click split, 2 pulses crossing. "That path," I said. "Are you sure?" "No. Move." We made the far lip just as the plate behind us sagged and folded, the space where my heel had been turned into a mouth full of teeth that looked like old saw blades grinning upward. "Fun," Venbrandt said. "We should come here every morning." "Go," I said. We followed the hum. Twice it lied, maybe not a lie, maybe the engineers changed between panels. Behind us the tripod handler clacked across the plates we'd chosen not to use, hook scraping. We made the corridor's end. The next room was a square with a ceiling too low for comfort and walls that breathed. When the door shut behind us the walls came in half a hand's width and then stopped. The shareholders went quiet, the good kind of quiet you get when you know a thing is about to become a story you tell in bed for the rest of your life. "Not good," Dragon said. "Calm." Evaluating seems like he evaluated a throat. The ceiling valves coughed and a translucent fog poured out, sweet as rot. My tongue went numb where it touched the air. "Gas," Vetch coughed. "Hold," I said, hand up without thinking. "Breathe shallow. Slow." Chapter 12. The chorus answered me before my words finished leaving my mouth. "Procession, Threnody route available apogee lament any verse." "Really?" Venbrandt said, blinking tears, grim smile on his face like a man at a bad joke. "You gonna sing us out of this?" "That or die quiet," I said, and I sang. Words are tools until they're not. Then they're doors. I dragged the song up from whatever place inside me kept it and let it pour out of my mouth thin as a burn fog. It drifted to the ceiling, layered itself against the sweet rot, and the chorus rang a small bell in my ear. I set apogee lament on top of the gas, that cone of grief and pressure the first voice in the chorus taught me to shape, and the room's edges wrinkled. We stood in an afterwind I could feel with my skin more than see with my eyes, the air moving in a slow circle that wasn't the air the vents wanted. My chest loosened. My brain stopped ringing against bone. Threnody, procession, active allies in field, plus composure, minor DR, heel on movement. Chorus, Nels, -1, afterwind proc, 3/10 move, I said, and we did. Walking inside the ring pulled breath through our chests without panic. We pressed the walls. Vetch jammed his rebar spear into a seam and grunted. "Need a wedge?" "Here," Dragon said, and wrapped a chain around a bracket in his forearm, lean, tendons standing out in his neck like old cables. The wall inched. The gas ran faster. Somewhere behind the panel we heard the tripod's 3 feet, tap, shunk, scrape, and the hook worked a release we could not see. A side door slid open for it and shut again. Venbrandt's forearms shook. "Not going to hold," he said through his teeth. "Then drop," I said. "Get to the floor." We slid. The floor had seams too. A panel there was cut with a grid of squares that didn't belong. I coughed once, hard, and spit iron. I took the spear from Venbrandt, set it flat against 2 plates, and pushed with the heel of my hand in a rhythm the afterwind gave me, 1 2 3 4. A latch somewhere answered. The wall we'd been fighting wasn't the wall. It was a door. It swallowed itself back into the floor and the gas rolled out through the hole like smoke leaving a wound. We dropped through into a passage that stank of oil like buried light. "You okay?" Venbrandt asked, hand on Dragon's shoulder. "Fine," Dragon lied. The shareholders applauded. The clink of glass, the little sighs of people who got what they paid for. "Keep moving," I said. "We stay ahead of it or we die when that machine thing wants." The next room had no floor at all. A pit full of beams and chains and old machinery that looked like the ribs of a ship abandoned upright. A bridge ran across, if you could call it a bridge, 3 rails of metal laid side by side, each the width of a hand, The middle one dead straight and the outer two bowed like a hunter's bow. "Don't trust it," Duragan said. "Yeah," Van Brandt said. "I hate this one already." Above us the ceiling yawned. Fans thumped. Far below black water showed its teeth. The tripod came through the door behind us and did not hesitate. It put 2 feet on the boat rails and 1 on the center and scuttled, body low, the shovel hand reaching forward with a spider's patience to tap each segment. The rails hissed under its weight and settled. It made the far side, clicked a panel with its hook, and the room creaked toward a new mistake. "I can't do that," Van Brandt hissed shakily, looking down at his feet. "You can," Duragan said. "Or you fall." "Helpful. It's all I've got right now." Duragan grimaced. We eased out. The rails shivered with our weight. The center one looked honest enough. I put 1 foot on the boat left and felt it flex and almost take me. I pinwheeled in reverse. "You're lighter," I told Van Brandt. "Right rail. Go." "I hate you," he said, and went. We crossed together, breathing in time, my voice low, the last measure of work cadence timing our rhythm. Halfway a panel in the ceiling opened and dropped a chain with a hook that whooshed past Vetch's hair and spun, screaming. He ducked and nearly fell and I threw myself to the rail, now crawling on all fours. We reached the far side, and my legs shook so hard I had to hold the wall. "Never again," Van Brandt said, not meaning it. Duragan looked at his hands, flexed them as if reminding himself he still had them. "Tripod's waiting," he said. The room changed under our feet. Not fast, like something remembering how to breathe. Plates lifted, settled. A seam shut behind the tripod and opened in the wall to our left, a path that wasn't there for us. It went through like a flea into fur and was gone. "Not the same maze," Duragan said. "Yep, not like it ever was," Van Brandt answered. "It's playing its own game," laughed without mirth. The door facing us side open. A square corridor, tight enough that our shoulders brushed the walls. The floor was a patchwork of tiles stamped with symbols, circles, crosses, a little 8-pointed star. Up above, a low-size fan chopped the air. Not enough to move it. Enough to move us. "My guess? Circle, circle, star," I said. Van Brandt put his bare heel to a circle. The tile hissed hot and spat up a gout of steam that raked his calf. He jumped back swearing. The wound slizzed with acidic heat. "Circle bad," he hissed through his clenched teeth. We went single file, heel to heel, picking our way like men learning to walk again. Halfway down the corridor, a panel in the wall slid open and a pendulum blade swung across, low and hard. I felt the wind of it kiss my ribs. Duragan lunged, grabbed the blade mid-swing with the old chain still looped around his forearm, and held it mid-swing with a sound like a man lifting a cart. "Go," he hissed. We slid under one by one, backs scraping the floor. When we were clear he let the blade go and staggered. The chain cut his skin to the fat. He didn't say anything about it. He just shook his hand until he could feel his fingers again. The next chamber was smaller. 4 walls and no doors. The ceiling fell an inch. Stopped. Fell again. A press that wasn't urgent until it would be all at once. Cruelly it reminded me of my time playing Tetris but inverted. "There," Van Brandt said, pointing. A square of pale metal sat on a pedestal in the center. Not the same junk we'd seen in the last rooms. This was old work. Etched with a tiny rosette on one side. "It's a key," he said. "Fucking moons for what?" Duragan asked. A fresh seam opened in the wall and the tripod came in, slow and sure an inexorable pursuer. The ceiling dropped another inch. Dust sifted down. The machine took 3 neat steps toward us, shovel hand cocked, hook hand tapping the floor with a machine rhythm. "Does it want to eat us?" Vetch asked, incredulous. "No," I said. "It wants to put on a show. I'm pretty sure it doesn't need to eat anymore." It lunged. We scattered, the room getting too tight for anything but elbows and knees and low curses. The shovel smashed the pedestal. The key bounced, skittered. Van Brandt slid on his stomach, and it nicked his palm as he closed his hand over it. And for a heartbeat I saw the plate at the base of its spine flex. Beneath it, a small lock waited. A rosette, faint, almost worn smooth. "Got it," Van Brandt grunted. The shovel came down where his head had been. Stone popped like knuckles. "Back," I said frantically. "On the back." "Don't kill it," I said before I knew I'd speak. "We'll need it." Duragan snorted. "File that under talk for later." The ceiling kissed the top of my scalp. I drew breath and set the cadence in my throat, low and even. The air tightened in a ring. Threnody, procession, active, allies in field, plus composure, minor DR, heel on movement. Chorus, Nels, 3/2 Serenus and sings. Under Skyburn, Chains loosen. We rise like black rain. Left, I said, though there was no left to take yet. The machine swung and I threw Cinderfall Note into the joint of its shovel arm. Heat hit, sank. The metal colored, went from dull to ugly to cherry. A coil inside shrieked and the shovel slowed by a fraction, enough for Van Brandt to roll clear with the key in his fist. The ceiling fell again, less gracefully. The chorus gave me the little bell in my ear that it does when we're in certain danger. I took it. Go for the plate when it opens, I said. You see the notch? Yeah, Van Brandt said, breath thin. I see it. The tripod adjusted, learning us. It curled its hook inward, wrist reversing, and jabbed. The hook wasn't meant for that, but it did the work. It caught Vitch by the shirt and tore the skin beneath, dragged him across the floor like a fish. He slammed into the wall and grunted and held the key up where I could see it, as if to prove he still had the thing that mattered. Help him, child. Duragan pleaded. He wrapped the chain around one of its legs and pulled, not to topple, not with that weight, but to ask for its attention. Black rain names the lost. Now the sky bids higher still. I sing wrists open. I gave it an apogee lament. Not the full cone. A shard, like a sigh sharpened to a razor. The weight of grief laid across the machine's chest plate, more idea than force, but even ideas have weight in a room like this. Its stance staggered. The plate at its spine flexed as system shunted power to where I'd stolen it from. Now, I yelled. Van Brandt moved, he didn't have a choice. He slid under the shovel tearing his skin free with a vicious ripping. Then without stopping he moved through the chain that hung from its axle up over the joint, and climbed it like a cheap ladder. The machine bucked. He hung on with his knees. The eyes behind its facial grill washed white and then dark again, recalibrating. Its hook snapped to guard the plate at the spine and that was when Duragan looped the chain a second time and dragged the hook hand offline, teeth bared, tendons screaming. Go. He screamed, arms gushing blood. Vetch jammed the key home. It didn't seat. He swore, pulled it out, flipped it, jammed again. This time it found purchase, half in, stubborn. Turn me a notch, he gasped. It'll cut you off the back if you try alone, I said, and stepped forward but it was too late. As I watched the shovel hand bifurcate Van Brandt. Turn, he said again, the stubborn bastard held on despite losing his lower half. The key didn't want to move. It had been waiting too many years for the right hands. It hated us. He pushed anyway. The machine roared, a sound that had more man than thing in it, a recording shoved through a steel throat. Knelling now the ceiling fell to kiss our necks. Dust came down like snow. It turned a quarter. The machine shuddered. A relay somewhere took the wrong path. Lights in the walls strobed once, twice. The shareholders above us had gone very quiet. The clink of glass had stopped. Some leaned in with fear and delight enraptured. The tripod went mad. It threw itself backward into the wall to crush Van Brandt against it. My chest sparked. Duragan bellowed and wrapped the chain a third time and something in his shoulder tore with a wet pop I felt in my own teeth. Van Brandt's hands were slick and the key was slicker. He pushed lungs and ribs crushed, refusing to die. The key moved a hair. The machine squealed and the hook came free and then came down where Duragan's head had been, fast as gilt. He rolled and the hook took a bite out of the floor. Now, Van Brandt shouted, one last time, voice bright with pain that wasn't this room's fault, and he began to drop the tripod's spine, no longer above the key. It turned with the weight of his corpse. A sound ran through the chamber. Not a bell. Not a siren. A deep, old click, like a lock in the bones of the place finally doing the thing it had promised itself it would never do. The tripod froze. A plate slid over its eyes. The shovel relaxed, fell limp. Van Brandt squelched as he fell down the machine's metal. The walls shuddered. A seam limbed itself with soft blue to our right. Beyond it, a quarter that did not look eager to kill us immediately. Move, I said, because I did not want to think about this for a long time and I did not trust this mercy. We staggered into the passage. Behind us the tripod stood like a crucifix bolted to the floor, key turned, head down, a thing that wanted to be a man that had been forced to be a lesson. Keep an eye out, Duragan panted. His arm hung loose against his side. Wrong. There'll be another. The corridor narrowed, then narrowed again until we had to go sideways, shoulders scraping, ribs whining. The walls hummed with buried machines. Above us the shareholders were talking again, frantic now, their voices piled atop one another, some angry, some exultant in that ugly way people get when they think someone else's pain has taught them something. The wall to our left peeled back. Stairs rose. Not many. Enough. Up them. A door with a single slit of black glass like an eye. Down the steps, the pit yawned, the same one we had begun in, bars slick with sweat and old blood, couches spread like flowers around a grave. A man in a jacket full of thread of gold stood at the lip of the pit and clapped slow. He did not look happy. "Clever little rats," he said, voice amplified, tasting of sugar and bile. "Clever. We do so love it when the toys still surprise." Duragan leaned on the wall and wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "I'm going to kill him," he said, perfectly calm. "Soon," I agreed. Guards poured in through side doors, rifles at low ready, fascinated and fearful in equal measure. They did not descend. They did not need to. Doors in the walls behind us opened, and the corridors that had shifted to kill us now shifted to herd us toward the guards. The guards stood outside it and watched us with the old animal hunger that had no shame left in it. The lift took us down, into the throat of the hive, where the stink of men and the weight of stone were the only proofs we were still in a world and not some dream the sky had insisted upon. When the guards shoved us into the pen, the scarred woman looked up. The others rose, a ripple. Their eyes went to the blood, the burns, and missing member. "Did you win?" the young man whispered finally, afraid of the word. "No," I said. "A few of us didn't die. Sometimes that's the same thing on the way to winning." Duragan sank to the straw, cradling his arm, eyes black as mine felt. I lay down on the straw, the glass rectangle a hard warmth against my ribs, and listened to the hive breathe.